Well, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here, and glad that you have all those people tuning in online. Welcome to Wednesday Night Live with Our Watch. So happy to have you all here, and we are a place where we try to get good, solid truth out to everyone so that way you can have an effect in the culture that you live in. We are a place that wants to secure parental rights all across our state and our nation, and we know that that comes from having the right information and the right attitude, so that way we can step up and secure the Judeo-Christian values that this nation was founded upon, and so we can take back the public square. If you haven't done so already, I want to ask you to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook. Also, you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @RealPastorTim, so love to have you guys follow along. There's a lot going on in our culture, as you all know, and that's probably why many of you have come out tonight, and you want to hear what is going on. We are going to start by opening up the Word of God. We'll throw a scripture up here that I want to kind of use to start off the night, and that is this, Romans chapter 13, and I want to start off with this because this is a verse that's been poorly misused nowadays with everything that's going on with COVID-19 in our culture, but this is what it says. It says that the authorities do not strike fear in people who are doing right, but in those who are doing wrong. Would you like to live without fear of the authorities? Do what is right, and they will honor you. The authorities are God's servants sent for your good. But, and here's the caveat, if you are doing wrong, of course you should be afraid, for they have the power to punish you. They are God's servants sent for the very purpose of punishing those who do what is wrong. Now, we live in a society of laws. It's one of the things I love about America is this is a society of law and order. And if you are anything like me, you are expecting a soon return of Jesus Christ. How many of you know he's coming back? He is coming back. I saw your hand go up. I love that. He's coming back. And here's the thing. One thing that was told to us is in those end times, we would know that the love of many is going to grow cold. Why? Because lawlessness will abound. And we certainly see that lawlessness is abounding, and it's important to honor those in law enforcement that would help keep the peace and uphold the laws. And so I have with us tonight somebody who's very well respected here in our state, in our nation now. He's become kind of a rock star in America, Sheriff Chad Bianco. Thank you. I know I can speak for everybody that's here and everybody that's tuned online. We're so grateful that you came out tonight. And I want to just open up by giving you an opportunity to share a little bit about your own personal faith, if you would.
Sure. Well, to start with, I had a little conversation with Pastor Tim up there, talking about always questioning things and never take things for granted. I learned a lesson tonight because I was told that, just come out to this little podcast. And you just sit there and answer some questions, and then we show up with cars in the parking lot, and I told my wife, who's here, I said, hey, I don't think this is just a little podcast anymore. So just a little side note. I'll learn to question everything now. I thought the sanctity of my office was okay, that people were going to clear things for me, but they didn't. I'll have to talk to Taylor tomorrow. About my faith, I struggle sometimes with a testimony, with giving a testimony, because you listen to people's testimonies and something always brought them to Jesus or to God. And mine's boring. I don't really have that. I probably was in a very blessed childhood, and I had great parents and great grandparents and people around me. Religion-wise, I grew up in Utah, so I grew up, half of my friends were Mormon, half of them were Catholic, so I went to both churches. My parents didn't force me to do either one, but I went to both, and one says something, the other one says something else, so you learn that something's either wrong or something's missing because they're different. They say something different, but I've always believed in God. I mean, we always had the Bible. We always, I had my little tiny one next to my bed, and I would read it, and I was fascinated by it. And there was never a time in my life that I didn't believe in God. And I did normal bad things as a kid, as a teenager, those types of things, but I was not in trouble. I didn't have a rough life. I'm very, very lucky and very blessed. But when I came to California, I went to Harvest Church one day, and Pastor Greg has a gift, and I realized that is what was missing from the other two. And it wasn't about being a Mormon. It wasn't about that stuff that went along with that. It wasn't about the Catholic Church and the pomp and circumstance, if you will. It was about the Bible, and it was about Jesus, and it was about how you're supposed to be living and what he did for us. And that, it just kind of all clicked. And it's like, oh, that's what everything has been. And I felt it, and that's really what it was. It's kind of, it's boring. I really think it's boring, but I honestly, I live my life knowing that he's coming back, and that eventually I'm going to have to answer for what I've done. I try and make, especially in this job that I have, I try and make every decision based on a godly decision. What should I be doing, not for benefit of me, but for someone else. I raised my kids that way. I wish we raised 4 of our kids in Riverside. We sent them all to a Christian school. I wish I would have had that when I grew up. It wasn't there, but the kids, they may have hated it at the time, but all of them have thanked us now that they're older for what we gave to them. So my wife and I know that we were very blessed with what we have, with what we've been given, and we know that God is a part of our life, and everything happens for a reason, and everything happens for somebody else's will. I think maybe my path to here is a really good. It was a lesson for me on how I should live and what I should be asking for and what I should be doing. For all of you that voted for me this time, thank you very much. If you didn't, hopefully you learned the error of your ways and you vote for me the next time. But I did run before. I ran in 2014, and it was rough. I mean, it was an uphill battle. It was against all odds, and I prayed every day to win. And obviously I lost. And shortly after that, I realized that I wasn't supposed to win. And so I was praying for the wrong thing. And we had some personal issues with health that kind of grounded us a little bit. Cancer sucks. Sorry, church. But we came to grips with that. We realized that what I was trying to do personally wasn't really what we were supposed to be about. And so although I had not planned on running again because of the health issues, we were going to go live in a mountaintop somewhere and be good for the rest of our lives. And what my prayer changed to, what I realized, and shortly after the last election, was we were praying for the wrong thing. And so the prayer after that was, I will do whatever I'm supposed to be doing. If whatever in my life is meant to be, that's what we're praying for, that I see it, that we do it, and whatever is going to happen, doors will open, and I'm just supposed to walk through them. And quite honestly, this last election, that is exactly what happened. I was not going to run. I said no several times, and everything just kept, the door was open a couple times, and I didn't go through, finally got kicked through it. And that was really throughout that whole time is what we prayed for, is if I'm going to win, I'm going to win. It's supposed to be, not for me, but for what I'm supposed to be doing. And it worked out fine. So I'm reminded of that often. And as corny as this might sound too, I know I'm here for a reason. It certainly is not for me. Honestly, I'd rather be on a mountain somewhere. Yeah. But I know I'm here for a reason. I know I was put here for a reason, and what that is, we don't know if we've known that yet. It may be next week, it may be a year from now, maybe 10 years from now, I don't know. But I know that whatever it is, God's in charge of it, and he's put me here for that reason. So
sure, yeah. Yeah, I've told my congregation this before, is that if I had it my way 7-8 years ago, I would have moved to Montana. I'd be fishing and hunting and sitting on a river every day. That's what I would have. I would have left California a long time ago, but I would have been like Jonah. I would have been swallow it up and then spit out on Huntington Beach somewhere in the middle of a protest, So, I mean, God has us all here for a reason. He has all of you here for a reason. Everybody watching online that lives here in California, you're here for a reason. And, God has us here for such a time as this. You just passed 20 years of marriage. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was just this week, so cool. Your wife is here somewhere.
She's out there in the back.
She's out there, right there. She is right there. You know what? It's a hard thing for a man to be in the position you're in, and a lot of times people don't realize how hard it is for the woman that is by your side to be in the position you're in. So we applaud you as well. Thank you for all you do. I would guess that 5 months ago, you never would have thought that when you were running for sheriff and you got elected as sheriff that you'd be jammed into the middle of what we're all in right now.
No, not even close.
Yeah, I don't think anybody that's kind of leading in this whole situation, in my opinion, leading people in the right direction in the middle of the situation, I don't think anybody thought they would be ever in something like this. This is kind of taken the world by surprise.
There were a lot of firsts.
Yeah, there's a lot of firsts, and it seems almost like every day there's something new, and it's hard to navigate in this type of stuff. But in the midst of this, you've made some very impactful statements, and I want to bring one of those up. You said, I refuse, and I was there the day you said this. I was really proud to hear you say this. I refuse to make criminals out of business owners, single moms, and otherwise healthy individuals exercising their constitutional rights. What a great statement. And we were talking before we came out, and you said that you took an oath. And it was well, go ahead and explain. Explain the oath you took for people who don't understand when you become a law enforcement officer.
When you become a law enforcement officer, you take an oath. You swear an oath, raise your hand, swear that oath before God. And when I took office as a sheriff, I did it again. And while I've been the sheriff, I've administered that oath to hundreds of new deputies. And basically the oath is you're swearing to uphold the Constitution of the United States, state of California, and protect it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And it's a nice pomp and circumstance, get good pictures and everything else. But quite honestly, okay, now let me go fight crime. And I never really thought that those words would actually come to play. And I mean, I'm supposed to be protecting your businesses and your homes and your kids and everything else from bad guys. Right. And I didn't believe that I was going to be put at the forefront of protecting constitutional rights. I mean, it's one thing, the Fourth Amendment, yes, the one that law enforcementers deal with all the time, searches and seizures, those types of things. But, I mean, we basically, for almost 80 days now, had our freedoms taken from us. We willfully gave them up. But they, I mean, it was under a force. It was under force of arrest or a force of citation, fines. And it really had to hit home that, oh my gosh, I don't remember signing up for this, but now I guess I remember that oath. Right. And so there were numerous things that built up into this. This was a couple weeks into the COVID crisis here. And there were just so many things that were happening when you look at all of them as a whole that brought me to that point, to thinking of that morning of what I was going to say. And it all led to, I started it by saying that we are all, the governor and the doctor for Riverside were participating in something that had never, ever been happened in the history of our country. And they ordered people home. They ordered businesses closed. They closed churches. I mean, everything they did, not all churches. And that's what went to the whole constitutional thing is, I mean, we have certain freedoms and certain rights and certain things that the government doesn't give to us. That's what God gave to us. And when those things start getting taken away, your freedom and your freedom of movement and your freedom of, even wearing a mask. I mean, nothing just made sense, and it just got too confusing. It got too messed up, and finally, you get to the point where, okay, we've had enough now.
Yeah.
We tried to play along, and we were all good with doing it. It sounded horrible in the beginning, and I'll be honest with you, I was all for it in the beginning, because how it was posed to us in that first meeting was that in California, or in Riverside County, 1 million people were going to be infected, and 30,000 people were going to die in a month and a half. So for me, it's like, oh my God, we can't do that. We have to do everything we can. And so I think that's why everybody agreed to it in the beginning. Because what they told us in the beginning and what we projected, or what those numbers were, they were scary numbers. And we certainly don't want to be a part of that. And we don't want to be, we want to do everything we can to prevent that. But as the weeks went by, it became very apparent that isn't the case. That wasn't the case. Those numbers, I don't want to say the numbers were fabricated. I think they may have been exaggerated. They may have been a big projection, and everybody just ran with it. And it was so scary that it's easy to repeat. I mean, we never repeat good things. We always repeat the bad things, the scary things. It makes more headlines.
Right.
And then that's what got us to this point. And then just more things got taken away. And then at the same time, when all of this is happening, some of the same people that are telling us that we have to stay home are telling me that I have to release criminals from jail. So real criminals. I mean, I'm talking, in our jail, we only have the bad ones: child molesters, rapists, robbers, bad criminals. We don't house misdemeanors, and we don't house nonviolent people. So I'm releasing bad people back into the community if I was to do that. While they're telling me to go release the single mom that's trying to work 3 jobs to put food on her table, or the business owner that's trying to employ the single mom, I'm supposed to make criminals out of them. Right. But release the child molesters.
Right.
And it was just over the top.
Yeah, and you look at the recidivism rate on some of these guys. I mean, some of the ones that were let out, not in Riverside County, but other counties.
We have them too.
Okay, but let out, and then they're right back in. One of the guys exposed himself. I mean, it's just ridiculous to think that that's the solution. It's obvious to people with common sense that's not the solution. It's just obvious. And so you wonder, where is the common sense? It's nice to have a sheriff that's actually exercising common sense and defending, using the oath that you took, defending the Constitution. You went public with that statement, and another part of that statement was that I can't quote this because I didn't write it down, but essentially you said something to the fact that there should be no new normal. Any new normal is an infringement on our constitutional rights.
Yeah. So where I came with that was, it was being really forced down. I said every time you turned on the news, it was the new normal. The masks are the new normal, and the new normal is you can't go hiking. The new normal is you can't, you have to be 6 feet apart. That's the new normal, our new normal. When we go back, when we let businesses open, the new normal. It's like, wait a minute. I mean, our country was formed on the basis of freedoms. And so a new normal means that we're not freedom anymore. We're not free anymore. So in order for something to change, it means that you've got to change the rights that we already have, the rules that we already have, and we can't have that. There can't be a new normal, because what we had, our normal, is the best country in the world.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you went public with this knowing that there was going to be backlash, and I'm sure you had to sit down and talk to your wife. Okay, you had to sit down, talk to your wife, go, okay. And I've had these conversations with my wife, like, hey, listen, this is what I'm going to go and I'm going to do this, and here's what's going to happen. Going into this, you knew that there would probably be some backlash. I mean, has it been everything you expected? You've got a room full of people, and I know there are people tuning in online that are just jumping up and down in their living rooms, excited when you're talking. So has it been everything you thought it would be, or have you? How's it been for you and your family?
I don't know what I expected. I don't think I thought it through that much. I knew that meeting was coming up. I knew that I had to say something. I went over it a little bit with Denise that morning, and a lot of you, I'm assuming, in here are married, and that conversation didn't go very well. I told her what I thought I was going to say, and it didn't go well from there. And it was the fears. It was the you can't say that. Oh my gosh, we might as well move now. So we were prepared for it to be negative, and especially when you get in politics and you look at, and unfortunately, I will never consider myself a politician, but everyone tells me I have to be because I get elected. But, and by somehow that makes me a politician. But, so with that, you expect that it's roughly around 50-50. And so we were guessing, are we going to be 60-40? Are we going to be 51-49, 50-50? Or are we going to get blown out of the water? And so I did what I knew I had to do, and it pretty much exploded right after that. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. It's probably like 99 or higher positive toward me. And it's even gone. It's certainly not along traditional party lines. So it's not just that the conservative Republicans are all in my side and the liberal Democrats are not. There were many people that said that they, during the election, they would never have voted for me, and they didn't vote for me, and they didn't believe me, but they firmly stood behind me now, and I'm standing up for principles, for what's right, for laws and the Constitution, and they would come right out and say, I'm a Democrat, but I support you. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but maybe throughout this whole thing, maybe it's just what's right. I mean, maybe it's this. What could come out of this is our politics is broken, and it has to go back to what's right instead of what R says or what D says.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I'm seeing that. I've been involved in a lot of protests lately, and
I heard.
Yeah. I had to call this guy. I don't know if you guys know, I'm a chaplain for Riverside Sheriff's Department. So I had to call him up and say, hey, we haven't actually even met yet. I'm one of your chaplains, and I got arrested. So.
So normally that would end employment. I mean,
but the thing I've noticed is that it's not R, it's not D, it's freedom-loving Americans that see our freedoms being stripped away from us in front of our very eyes. And we want somebody, America is thirsty for a politician to actually do what they said they would do. This is why, a lot of people who didn't like Trump from the start, they're liking Trump now. Why? Because he's doing everything he said he would do. And that's a rare find in politics nowadays. So you ran on certain principles, and you've backed those up with your actions and your words, and that's commendable. And it's got to be difficult. It's got to be difficult conversations with your family. You're saying 50 to 49, whatever. She might have been saying you're 51-50.
It's pretty close. She was.
Yeah.
It's the response has been overwhelmingly positive. There's outliers that somebody's always got to tell you that how horrible you are. That I'm going to murder everybody because if I'm not going to arrest you for wearing a mask, that means I'm killing 1 million Riverside County residents. But you get those weirdos.
Right.
But otherwise, for the most part, it's overwhelmingly almost 100% positive.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it, especially what you said, is true. But a lot of the response that I got was from regular people that are just responsible, good adults. And they wanted to be treated like responsible adults.
Yeah.
And, when in the beginning, when I initially said, before this, when I came out and said that I was not going to arrest people, I started doing the videos and saying I would not enforce it, but I was asking people, look, this is bad, and let's stay home and let's do this. And I think that the normal human being is good and cares about other people, and they want to do what's right, and they want to do what they can to help. And when you treat them like that, when you treat them with respect, you don't order them to do something, you ask them to do something with you, then you get cooperation, and that's how good things happen. When you start dictating what people are supposed to do, or you tell them or threaten them what they're going to do, then you get rebellion and you get anarchy, and it goes sideways really quick.
Right. Yeah. So looking at everything that's going on, I mean, there's a lot of politics involved right now. We've got the talk of a bailout for the state. I mean, we've got so many people on unemployment right now. I don't know how we can continue at the rate we're going. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know if the government can print money fast enough. And so they're talking about a bailout. Of course, Gavin Newsom, our governor, stated that if the president were to withhold a bailout from the state, that our first responders would be the first to go. And that for me was frustrating. Obviously, I have a tremendous amount of respect for a lot of teachers. But knowing that there are teachers sitting at home doing nothing, still collecting a paycheck, and again, this is not against teachers. What I'm saying is you guys are out on the road working, and you're dealing with some of the weirdest situations you've ever had to deal with, and for our governor to say the first ones to go are men and women in blue. It just... I mean, how do you, as the sheriff of our county, how did that hit your ears?
That is a true politician, because he doesn't necessarily like police anyway. He would rather have government order, and to be honest with you, and especially a movement in Sacramento, is to take power away from sheriffs. So sheriffs in our state, there's only a few of us, one in each county, and we do wield a lot of power. He can't tell me what to do. I mean, I was elected by all of you to do what's right for Riverside County, and it comes with a lot of political power. So for him to say everybody's going to get arrested with no mask or if you go outside, it's really up to me if that happens, not up to him. And so there is a movement to take power away from sheriffs. So I know behind the scenes that that's really what he feels. But then at the same time, and here's a little lesson in civics for him, the number one rule or the number one role of government is public safety. It's not the bullet train. It's not social work. Those are the things that come after you take care of public safety, keep everyone safe, keep the county safe, the city safe, the state safe, the government, the country safe, and then everything else is all gravy on top of that. Then we do what we can do. But what he did, and why I say that's a true politician, even though I know he has a disdain for me and for law enforcement, he's going to use the public's like of law enforcement for his benefit. So if we don't get that, I'm going to have to get rid of all the cops. So that means you're going to shift your dislike from him and put it somewhere else, whether you blame the government and Trump or whether you blame somebody else for not giving us enough money. It's certainly not going to be his fault.
Right. And I saw that at play. Many of you know I was arrested for exercising my constitutional rights. And the thing that really frustrated me was that day was going beautifully. And how many of you were up there that day? And how many of you were up there just this past weekend? Look at that. So here's the thing. So the feel of just this last weekend, if you weren't there when I got arrested, it was the same feel. So it was a lot of fun. People out, I describe it like this. It was like a 4th of July party without the beer and the steaks. I mean, it was an incredibly good time. Freedom-loving Americans waving their flags, having a really, really good day. And Gavin Newsom couldn't have that. So what did he do? He told the CHP, who all day long had no masks on, they were riding their bikes around, hanging out with us, enjoying their time with us. What does he do? He puts them in riot gear and shifts the narrative, because we were there to protest Gavin Newsom's policies. So he shifts the narrative. Now what the news is reporting is it's us going against the police. It's us against law enforcement, when that was not the attitude at all of anybody that was there. But that's what he's trying to do, is change that narrative, which is why, there was a video that went viral. Some former Marine was saying, Pastor Tim got thrown to the ground, which wasn't true. I didn't get thrown to the ground, but he got thrown to the ground like a piece of trash. And this went viral, but he was like facing off with the police. It's like, no, don't feed into Gavin Newsom's narrative. This is not us against the law enforcement. We love law enforcement, right? So you're absolutely right. I mean, you can see the writing on the wall. You can see what his motives are. And I think it's up to us as Americans and as Californians to see that when that happens and not play into that narrative and really push back against it. You said this. You said, we don't need the government being our parents. And you kind of alluded to that just a little bit earlier. So with that in mind, a lot of what we talk about on this program and a lot of what I try to push for is parental rights, parental responsibilities. How do we as loving parents and grandparents, how do we have a good effect on our community? Because the Bible says to leave an inheritance for your children's children. And Senator Mike Morrell, he said it wonderfully one time, and it just hit just everything that I believe about that verse. He said, it's not just money that you're leaving to your children's children. It's an America that we had. It's an America that we grew up with. And we want to leave an America to our children's children. America that is the land of the free, the home of the brave, a place where our kids can walk the streets feeling safe and have all the opportunities to grow up and pursue happiness the way we were all afforded in this nation. And so where do you see, the idea of the government not being our parents, where do you see a lack of parental involvement in our communities where we can grow? We're here tonight, we're parents, we're grandparents, many of us. We want to have a good effect in our culture. And as a law enforcement agent, I know that you see a lack sometimes of parental involvement. And it's one thing for us to say, well, we don't want the government to be our parents, but in many ways, parents in our society need to kind of step up.
Very much so, and we certainly see that in my line of work. And we, as a deputy, when I haven't done this in a long time, but I'm still around it when everybody else is doing it. And when we have to go out and solve people's problems, especially with their kids, where you get teenagers that are just defiant and fighting with their parents and just out of control. And as deputies, when we talk about it after, it's like, oh yeah, I had another one where, they expect me to come do what they've failed to do for the last 15 years. And they want me to do it in 20 minutes. They want me to fix that kid in 20 minutes, what they failed to do. And I think even if you go back, I don't want to date myself in age, but it did go back a long time when this started. And it started with no responsibility. And I think I was the last of it. My parents had me when they were very, very young. So I was older and a teenager when when my aunts and uncles and when their friends started having kids. So the kids that I was around were a lot younger than me. And I remember thinking, how did they just get away with that? I mean, what is time out? I want that time out thing because what I got, I don't want that. And I remember telling my parents, I'm like, well, why am I, even grounding, why do I have to get grounded? Can't I just sit in the corner for a while? I'll think about what I did. And it didn't work for me. And I think that was the start of where we are today, because it just got to be where you didn't discipline your kids anymore. And I'm not talking about abusing your kids. We know we can't do that. But it's right. We all know right from wrong. In a Christian environment, that's really all of our values, whether someone says they're a Christian or not. If they know right from wrong, it's a Christian value. And that's where they learned it from. And if you're not teaching your kids that, unfortunately, in our livelihood, in my livelihood, what we deal with are usually single-parent kids that are in trouble, and they grow up just not having a leader or someone to influence their decisions and to keep them on the right path. And so then it's job security for us, unfortunately, and then they end up having kids, and now they've had kids already, and so we're almost 2 to almost 3 generations into the lack of responsibility and the lack of good moral character. And you talk about freedoms, and we all want our freedoms. We all want to do whatever we want, but all of us in here know that there's a limit to your freedom. We have our constitutional rights, yes, and we have our freedoms to do whatever we want, but I don't have the freedom to punch you in the face and not have repercussions from that. There are rules, there are laws, and there's a public order that we must have. And when we promote, you look at our kids' role models, they aren't really good role models. I don't want my kid looking up to some of these athletes that are, drugs and alcohol and, things like that. I want them looking up to somebody good and somebody that's wholesome and cares about other people. And I think ultimately that's why we're in the position that we're in, is everybody's entitled to no responsibility. They can kind of do whatever they want. It's somebody else's fault. It's not their fault that their kids are horrible. It's yours, because who knows why. And it's, I think as adults, we can't, while we might be able to, I mean, I've said this to my wife before in the past, and I was involved before I got too busy, unfortunately. I was involved in coaching kids. And it's a love for sport. I love all sports, but it was a way for me to influence their decisions, because are sports about, you're not going to be a professional athlete. You may, but the chances are slim to none. But you're going to learn how to treat other people, how to work hard. You're going to learn adult work ethics. You're going to, sacrifice and reward and all of those things. And some of the parents weren't involved, and they didn't have dads. And so while I wasn't their dad, I could be someone that they could look up to. And I think that if more of us did that, we can't, I mean, everybody, unfortunately, circumstances, there might not be a dad in the family. But if you can influence that kid and be a good role model for him. One thing that I was at, this was only a few months ago, maybe about 6 months ago now, I was at a seminar, and I was listening to a person. He was a former prison guy, former gang member, and he had found God in prison, and he was coming out trying to convince kids not to go into drugs. And he made a statement. He said when he grew up, he said if he would have lived next to a cop, he probably would have been a cop, but he lived next to a drug dealer. That was his role model. He didn't have a dad. So what he had to look toward, or how to grow up, was the drug dealer next door that was a gang member. And sure enough, he became a drug dealer next door and ended up going to prison for it. And so now he's trying to influence kids to stay away from that path, to do the right thing, to find God, to find a better path. Yeah. And I think if we all do that same thing, I mean, we all know somebody that it may be having trouble, and they may just be looking, especially men, they may just be looking for a good, godly man they want a role model. They want somebody to model themselves after.
Yeah. I talk a lot about different levels. If you're a Christian man, there's certain levels that we're supposed to have in our life. You're supposed to have a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy. And obviously the Paul is that spiritually mature guy. You've got your Barnabases, which are like on the same level as you. And then you have your Timothys. You're people that are spiritually less mature than you. And we should have those different levels in our life where there's somebody speaking in to your life, somebody speaking into what you're doing. This is why I'm so grateful that here at 412 Church, we were able to partner together with 412 Church in San Jacinto, where for many years I didn't have a pastor over me. Because we're a separate church. And I thought, well, I need that. I need somebody who's spiritually more mature than me, somebody who's been doing this longer than me. And God blessed me to have Pastor Tom Hughes fill that role in my life, where this guy's been doing this a long time, and he knows what he's doing. And I can have that accountability where I can't just go off and do whatever I want. I actually am accountable to somebody else. And then you've got your Barnabases, people that just on the same level. You can go out do ministry with. You can go hang out and just have a good time. And then you got your Timothys. These guys that are, they're not as far along as you are. And you can bring them in. You can show them how things are done. And you can be that person that's holding them accountable. And if you're a Christian man and you don't have those three levels in your life, you're really missing out. Because there's something incredible about pouring into somebody else. It really is a beautiful thing to be able to train somebody up. And most of the time, Christian men, they've got one of those three really strong. They got a bunch of Barnabases, but they don't have anybody pouring into them, and they're not pouring into anyone else. Or they got a whole bunch of Timothys, like, I just love telling guys what to do. But I don't have any Paul. I don't have anybody telling me what to do because I'm the top dog, So they get out of balance, and really you're missing out if you don't have those three levels in your life. It really is a beautiful thing to have that. I want to circle back to the whole idea of criminals getting let out. You've briefly talked about that. I thought it was kind of funny that they're letting pedophiles back out on the street, but arresting the pastor. That was really a frustration for me. But we've seen that there's been a lot of push for this right now, especially with the whole COVID pandemic that's going on, to let them out onto the streets. So I can only assume you're getting a lot of demands for this. Mm-hmm. How are you responding to these demands?
I ignore most of them. I answer some saying no, very, very emphatically no. I will not release inmates because of someone telling me that they have to be released because of COVID fears. The danger that they pose to the public is far greater than this virus poses to them in jail. The reports in the media, I mean, the attorneys, the activists that are just pro-inmate, that just want all crime done away with. They want to close all the prisons. They want no jails. They want no cops. Just people do whatever you want. No consequences for anything. That's what these activists are. And it's very frustrating for them to just demand and say that how dangerous it is. And I get the threats that I'm going to murder them and their blood is on my hands and I'm going to be responsible for their deaths. They have better medical care and medical care is more readily available to them than it is to me. I have to call and make an appointment. Right. They just show up every morning or at night and talk to the nurse, and then the doctor sees them the next day. You can't see the doctor the next day. I mean, you make appointments, and that's how it works. But yet, somehow, the narrative is that they're not entitled to care in the jail, and they have great care in the jail. We have a great medical system that provides outstanding care for them. It's not dirty. Jail is not a dirty place. Jail is not I'm looking around and it's more of there's older people in here. When you picture a jail, it should be bars and dirt floors and here's your pan of food and whatever it is. Yeah. The TV shows that I watched growing up. And it certainly isn't that anymore. So they are in jail, and they should be in jail because they are victimizing and they are preying on all of you. And unfortunately, in our department, I mean, I can't say that there is no threat to their safety, because there is. 2 inmates died that were in our custody, and at the same time, 2 of our employees have died from this virus. So it's not that I don't think this is not a big deal. I know that this virus is bad, and it's not just the flu. It's a lot stronger, more potent than the flu. And if you have some type of comorbidity, I always say that wrong. If you got other medical condition, it could affect you. If you're overweight, you have heart disease, or something like that, it could affect you. So we care about that, and we identify the inmates that may be susceptible, and we watch for them, and the nurses watch for them. And so for those people to demand that I let them go, it's just not going to happen. It made it worse.
Good.
It made it worse that other counties decided that they were going to do that, because, and I believe it goes back to, I think that I am just doing what's right. I'm not doing what I think is politically correct for me, because honestly, if it was politically correct and I didn't want negative press, I should have just released them like the other counties did. And then so when the other counties released them and I said absolutely not, and then the news put us against each other, then all of a sudden everybody stood up and said, well, hey, I like that guy better. And then everybody clued in that, hey, maybe the general public doesn't think like the activists. And I think throughout this whole process, I think that's what's really starting to happen is all of us, I mean, if everybody raised your hand in here, how many of you vote every time? There's only 30% of you. I mean, everybody voted, but yet only 30% of the people vote. So I think it's going to wake, I hope it wakes up a bunch of people to say that we've taken a lot of things for granted, and we do want people held accountable for their crimes. And if you're not going to hold them accountable, we're going to put somebody else in place so you can make sure they're safe.
Right. I mean, it goes back to the verse that I opened with out of Romans. Their authorities are God's servants sent for your good. But if you're doing wrong, of course, you should be afraid. They have the power to punish you. And that's the idea is there should be a punishment for the crime. Otherwise, it's lawlessness, and when there's lawlessness abounds, the love of many will grow cold. And we're seeing that, but I agree with you. I think we're seeing a lot of good. I've been trying to point people to silver linings. Mm-hmm. As we're going through this. I've been pushing for a long time for parents to get their kids out of the public school system because of the trash that's being taught to the children. And, so many parents were like, well, I can't pull them out. Well, where are they now? they're at home, I'm hearing of people actually that can't go out to eat and they can't, their kids aren't in school, so where are they at dinner time? They're sitting around the dinner table. Wow, all of a sudden these kind of things are happening. I think that's really cool.
They're having conversations with their kids.
And some of them are realizing I can homeschool. This isn't really as difficult as everybody tells me it is. And, a lot of people think that homeschool kids are weird, and I'm telling you, they're not. Homeschool kids are some amazing kids, My daughter was homeschooled, and at age 19, she got hired by Corona Police Department, and she loves it, and she interviewed better than everyone else there. Obviously, she got the job, but at 19 years old, she's articulate, and she knows how to have a conversation with adults, and that's something that a lot of 19-year-olds don't have because they went through the public school system. So I think we're seeing a lot of silver linings in this. We're seeing the churches waking up. We're seeing people getting more involved. People are going to vote now. I mean, so many silver linings in the midst of this, and I think it's important for us to see those really good things that are coming on. I want to ask you, so we have time for one last question, and I want you to just throw out what you feel here, but I always like to give
that always gets me in trouble.
I love to give my guests, a lot of what we talked about can be, frightening for some people, frustrating for some people. I mean, this is, we just talked silver linings, but you have to find the silver linings because there's storm clouds everywhere, A lot of this stuff that we brought up is not exactly fun things to deal with. So what encouragement, if you could leave our audience here and everybody that's online with one bit of encouragement, what would it be?
One bit of encouragement. Well, since just to stay on topic, I think that we're, especially here in Riverside County, because I promise you, and I apologize for this, I've put us under a microscope. I went against the governor, and so he's watching. So he is going to be watching what we're doing, and they're going to look at anything they can to make an example out of us and to say, "See, look what happened." So this is what I think that as we progress through this and as we continue, talk rationally to people. It doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be always an argument. It doesn't have to be demanding and then get volatile. You just talk common sense, you talk rational, and there really is nothing they can argue against that. And if they do, then just end that conversation and move on. But as we progress through this and as we want to get over it, I can tell you that our numbers are going to go way up because our testing is going way up. So you can't get less positives if you test more. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But right. So they're going to try and use that against you. Just use that simple argument. Well, of course the numbers went up. They're testing more. But at the same time, while my wife and I, trust me, I don't care which one of you in here, we don't want to wear a mask any more than you do. We don't like the masks. And with that said, we always take a mask with us, and if we have to wear a mask to go into a business, then we'll put it on. If we don't want to, then we'll go to a different business. There's no sense in arguing with them. There's no sense in arguing with anybody else. We do care about other people. While I may think they're wrong, they still have their opinion and their fears and whatever it is, and if I can quell their fears by not talking to them or staying 6 feet away or not insulting them or something like that, fine. We're going to do that. So I think basically in the very beginning, I believed that everybody should be treated like adults, and that's how it should be. I'm not going to threaten you with arrest. I just want you to do what's right. And I think that's if we as a county do that from this point on, we just do what's right. We care about other people. We know that this virus is bad, and we treat it bad, but yet we live our lives being careful. That's all we have to do. You just be careful. There's no new normal other than just being careful. Be civil. Care about other people, and I think there will be a lot of good come out of it, because I think my advice is to be more social in person rather than I say this all the time. There are a whole lot of people out there that are saying things to me on social media that wouldn't say it to my face.
I don't know what that's like.
And and I think that's where we've got as a society is we don't interact with people anymore. And my wife and I are just as guilty with interaction as not knowing all of our neighbors. Well, we do now. It's like it took this for us to figure out who our neighbors were and who belonged in our neighborhood. So, I mean, that's a good thing. So I think if we can just be, if we can use this to be better people, I think there's that is one good thing that's going to come out of this.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Well, Sheriff Bianco, I want to thank you so much for coming out tonight. I know you're a busy man and you have a lot of things on your plate right now, but I think it's been great for all of us here to hear directly from you. A lot of people get to see you on podcasts, but I think it was cool for everybody to see you here tonight, even though you weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
Don't get too mad at Taylor.
My last podcast was me and the person, and that's it.
Yeah.
In a nice little soundproof room, and it was all nice. Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, it's usually not this full, but
that's good.
We had a pretty cool guest tonight, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Pretty cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It truly is a blessing to have you all here and enjoying this time with us. I think the words of the sheriff resonate with each and every one of us to not just have that social interaction on social media, but this is something we're all longing for. This is something we all need. This is the way God created us. He designed us for fellowship. Why? Because He is a God who wants fellowship with us. He wants to have a relationship with us. And so let me just encourage you all to continue to fellowship. Don't let this pandemic stop you from fellowshipping. There's a spirit of fear that people are walking around with, but God has not given us a spirit of fear. And so let's walk around with the spirit God has given us, and let's encourage everybody to do the same. So thank you for everybody that tuned in online, and I want to let you know next week we're going to have who used to be Assemblywoman Melissa Melendez, now Senator Melissa Melendez. She's going to be out next week, so I want to invite you all back and everybody that's tuning online to check it out next Wednesday night. God bless you. Thank you.